It's been pretty difficult. I'm used to writing about companies and entities that throw all kinds of static at you and noise as you try to report a story. And Mr. Snyder's legal team, they're very good lawyers. They're very aggressive. He's had private investigators out there that apparently have been trying to dig up dirt on me, and I don't know what they found. I'm assuming there's a dossier out there that says
I got that call, Will. Now,
You got John McMullen and Jody McDonald, Mac and Mac First for 65 Guys in the House. Joining us from the Washington Post is Pulitzer Prize winning author Will Hobson. Will, Jody McDonald and John McMullen here. How you doing?
good, guys. Thanks for having me. How y'all doing up there?
Good seeing you, Will.
You too, John.
It's been a while.
It has.
First Pulitzer Prize winner on Birds 365 that I know of. So thrilled to have you here. Thrilled for your success. Will's latest, he's done a great job with Liz Clark, especially with all the behind the scenes issues with Daniel Snyder, the Washington Commanders, the latest being revealing that the $1.6 million settlement that was out there was due to sexual assault allegations with the Commanders owner, who's in I don't know if the south of France, but I like saying that for Norman Bremen references right now as Congress tries to go after him. First off, before we delve into that piece, Will, how difficult has it been dealing with the Commanders through this whole process and Daniel Snyder pretty clearly trying to obfuscate the entire way?
It's been pretty difficult. I'm used to writing about companies and entities that throw all kinds of static at you and noise as you try to report a story. And Mr. Snyder's legal team, they're very good lawyers. They're very aggressive. He's had private investigators out there that apparently have been trying to dig up dirt on me, and I don't know what they found. I'm assuming there's a dossier out there that says
I got that call, Will. Now,
but yeah, it's each one of these stories has been very stressful, and I'm grateful that the last one is published and behind us.
All right, so you're certainly taking arrows from one side. There's the ongoing process that they're going through on the governmental side. How's the league been for you? Their job is to protect one of their own, which is Daniel Snyder. But if he's going to help bring the league down at some point, Roger Goodell went in and he faced the committee and had to take slings and arrows for them, getting either information and or point of view out of the league. How has that gone for you of late?
The league office has not given us much of anything. But I mean, I think what has been interesting to observe has been sort of daylight that has cracked between the NFL league office and the Commanders front office on these issues. I think from 2020 until mid to late 21, which was this first NFL investigation, and then the findings, the league and the Commanders were pretty much in lockstep in that, this investigation's everything's being handled fine, and there are no issues, and here's our punishment. We're not going to release a report, and so forth. And then since the Gruden emails came out, there's been sort of, the league office has been taking a bit of a more, from my view, aggressive stance with the Commanders. And I think the most recent example is when there was this most recent allegation of sexual harassment against Mr. Snyder. The team, again, tried to claim, we'll investigate this. We've hired this law firm. They'll investigate. And then Goodell, a few hours later, at a league event, says, that's not going to happen. We're going to hire our own firm to look into this, which is different than how this was originally handled back in 20.
Well, Beth Wilkinson, who was an attorney in D.C., sort of led the NFL's investigation into the Washington workplace, so to speak, Will. And a lot of the issues, at least from people looking on the outside, whether it's, just talk show hosts like Jody and I, all the way up to Congress, is the fact that the NFL has been very shut about their own investigation, and the fact that they won't sort of reveal certain aspects of it to, and people, some of the cheerleaders who accused um, the organization with some of these workplace issues have wanted their stories out there. And for whatever reason, the NFL has shielded that. Have you noticed a shift towards more sort of light, as you say, democracy dies in the darkness? That's the Washington Post on the masthead. Do you think there's been an effort by the league to say, all right, you know, this is a lost cause. Maybe we have to go in a different direction, or you have not sensed that?
I mean, I think from a big picture perspective, because the big question we always get asked is this the smoke? Is Dan Snyder on his way out? Is the league going to force him out? And I think I don't know of any push. My colleagues who cover the league and are in touch with ownership across the league don't know of any. And that's the big, you would need to see a majority of owners to support a move of that nature. And there's no indication that's coming. I think that what's happened is when the league allowed this first investigation to occur, they allowed it to be overseen by the team for a period of time. And that caused a problem with the Wilkinson investigation in that when the league took it over, Dan Snyder and the team still had a degree of control. They had essentially attorney-client privilege with Beth Wilkinson. So they could say, hey, you NFL, you're not allowed to release any documents that we don't want you to, because Beth Wilkinson was our lawyer too. We had a relationship with her, a professional relationship. So this latest investigation the NFL started, overseen by Mary Jo White, Dan Snyder and the team, they have no similar privileges there. So I think that there will be, at least we've been told, there'll be more transparency with this investigation. Mary Jo White will be allowed to release, to some extent, what she has found. Whether or not that changes the perspective of owners across the league, that I don't know.
All right, I want to take a little bit more back out onto the field, but certainly with the issues the Commanders are dealing with. A week to 10 days ago, Ron Rivera decided to step up and say, let me clarify a few things. When I was hired, this was my edict. This is what the Snyders wanted me to do. A lot of these things that are being unearthed now and being investigated happened before I got here. He kind of kicked his owner underneath the bus, which I was surprised by. He must feel very confident in his ability to keep his job. Maybe he thinks Snyder's got too many other things to fight that he can't think about firing the coach. But Ron Rivera kind of put himself above the fray and said things are changing culture-wise in Washington. Were you surprised by the stance and the way he delivered his message? And do you think he put himself on a hot seat with it?
He may have put himself on a hot seat with it, but I don't think, I think in the Commanders front office, I think it's certainly accurate to say there is fatigue over public relations controversies coming from above and not below. Sure. It's not, typically your NFL front office needs to run interference for PR crises that are being launched by the players. And in this organization, it runs differently. So yeah, I think anyone who is in a leadership role in that front office certainly looks at recent history and can think that I'm probably not going to be. I may or not be in this job very long, but I'm going to do the best that I can to set the appropriate tone for this front office and the organization underneath.
I think it was 2007, Will, where Roger Goodell first kind of intimated that the personal conduct policy not only should extend toward the players, as you mentioned, typically what we think about it as Deshaun Watson currently would be the most notable, but it also extended to coaches all the way up to owners. There's been no evidence of that, that the league takes allegations against owners, and there have been more than just Daniel Snyder. Jerry Richardson was actually essentially removed from Carolina, but there was also the aspect of he was aging and maybe he wanted out. And he said, all right, I'm done. Whereas Daniel seems to be fighting pretty clearly, doesn't want to leave to be the owner of the Washington Commanders. So you need 24 of 32 owners. I have you done any research? Have you done any investigative reporting about how the league handles these personal conduct potential issues with, say, ownership versus the players?
I mean, by the letter of the law, it should be the same. The response should be the same, which is there's an allegation of sexual assault against an owner that was raised in 2009 and Dan Snyder, and the league should be involved in the investigation. And the league should be involved in determining discipline, but they weren't back in 2009. And when Goodell was asked about that by Congress, he was a little circumspect about. He's like, I don't recall being told that was what Dan was accused of. And he kind of appeared to try to walk back a little bit. He's like, well, that policy's changed a few times. And it appeared to suggest that perhaps the NFL didn't have the degree of a hammer in 2007 that they do now. But I mean, it's obvious that these issues are handled differently with ownership as they are with players. There's no universe in which Ezekiel Elliott would be accused of sexually assaulting someone and the league would allow the Cowboys to oversee that investigation. So I mean, that's pretty much all we can say about it.
Fair enough. I need your take on subpoenas. Dan Snyder is not yet to be served. He is somewhere in the south of France, or so we believe, and that's why he hasn't been served. And the Redskins, the Commanders are putting out statements that, he hasn't rejected the summons yet. Yeah, but they can't get him while he's not in the United States. It's become an issue unto itself. I've seen some speculation that Snyder may try and wait out the clock, that there's a midterm election in November, and it could turn out to be a Republican a Democrat rather than Republican. That could end an ongoing investigation, if they carry it that far with Snyder having been subpoenaed. Is that possible? That he could basically stay in the south of France till November to wait out a midterm election so that he doesn't have to be served a subpoena to testify in front of the House committee? Is that realistic?
I mean, I don't know if he can just literally stay in France until November, but I'm certain everything at his legal team's disposal they will do to just avoid this and drag it out until after November. And we've been hearing that since this thing got started last fall, that they're just going to slow walk this and try to drag it out past the midterms. So I mean, I think I'm not quite sure what else the House committee can do. It appears they've done their investigation. They just want to ask Dan Snyder about it. I think it'll be interesting to see what this latest NFL investigation comes up with, and how the league responds.
You're inside the Beltway now, Will, so you get to see some.
I actually live just outside the Beltway.
Well,
good for you. Good for you.
You should and stay outside, from what I can see. So we're watching the House Oversight Committee. And they have Roger Goodell virtually. And, there's a lot of Daniel Snyder questions, but you also had the dog and pony show. They're asking him about the bladed footballs and this and that and re-legislating everything else. You mentioned, I'm not sure what Congress can do. Can they do anything? I mean, does that part of it really have any bearing on the story whatsoever? Do they have any power to do anything to Daniel Snyder and the Washington Commanders?
I think what the power that they really have, they've already exercised, which is to keep this story in the news, to give a megaphone to broadcast new allegations that then allowed the NFL, who may have been having a little bit of buyer's remorse about not releasing details from that first investigation, to launch a second investigation that they're now saying they'll release some public details about, and then to just create more negative PR that has probably had an influence on Dan Snyder's efforts to get local approval for a new stadium down here, which is really that is, I think, the North Star for that front office, outside of improving the product on the field, is getting a new stadium deal. and they're running into problem. I mean, theoretically, the Commanders should be in a great space for that. They've got 3 different public entities between Maryland, DC, and Virginia to bid against each other.
Right.
But the brand is not in a good space, and is not necessarily an entity that, if you're a government, you want to be seen as shoveling tens of millions of public dollars towards. And so I think that the PR component, I think, is how they've really exercised their power. But no, I don't. Outside of that, I don't really know what else the House can do at this point.
Then let me ask you about the behind-the-scenes conversations going on in the National Football League. Roger Goodell is the mouthpiece. He's the out front guy. He's the face of the NFL, and had to deal with it by going in front of the committee. But he's ongoing talking to the other 31 owners on a daily basis. They're putting forth a face of, we're working, and Dan is major, and we've had our own investigation. And Ron Rivera steps out and goes, we've got an improved culture. So they're trying to, as an entity with Goodell as the leader, put a smile face on things. Not easy, but that's what they're attempting. Behind closed doors, how ticked off are the other 31 owners? Is there any underlying drumbeat to get Snyder out as the owner of the Commanders? What do you think the rest of the National Football League is saying amongst themselves and with Roger Goodell about Dan Snyder right now?
I think that, and this is all speculation based on what I've heard from a handful of people that I've talked to, my colleagues have spoken to. I think that in terms of legal issues the league is dealing with right now, I think the Brian Flores lawsuit, and the minority coaching issue is the big priority. And I think that Dan Snyder is a secondary item there. I think that there's Snyder fatigue. I think that owners are annoyed that what should be a premier franchise has struggled the way they have, is not earning to the degree that they should in these owners' perceptions, and is just continually creating PR issues for the league. I think there are owners who probably would like him gone, but they don't want to set the precedent of forcing out somebody because there's a bad front office workplace culture and a few allegations against the owner, which I think could potentially arise in other front offices. So I think that's kind of the stalemate right now.
Yeah. Jerry Jones, for one, has had some pretty significant issues this offseason. Everything pales in comparison, it seems, to the Washington Commanders. Will, I just kind of backhanded Congress as a dog and pony show. I'm going to do a dog and pony show with you, because one of the stories, and I'm going way back, but one of the stories you did I was most interested in, and you might not remember, but what the heck, I got you here, so I'm going to ask, was the Peyton Manning HGH Al Jazeera story, which I thought was so interesting from so many levels. And you were able to uncover, I think at the time, that obviously the shipments were going to Peyton's wife, and the claim was that they were for certain medical issues that probably you're not going to typically give HGH for. I found this interesting because Al Jazeera is what it is, and certainly in the United States, people are going to say it's not credible, even though it's been a credible news organization. But there were problems on both sides of the story. So just sort of an overview, because I was always so interested in that story and the whole entire baseball versus football dynamic, where it seems like in baseball, if you get even a stain of PEDs, you're ostracized. In football, people are like, it's not that big of a deal. Did you kind of get that feeling?
I did, and that's not, I think it's not a terrible surprise to folks who know both these leagues, that I think there's just a perception there are more NFL players who use PEDs, and the testing. I mean, I think it's a fact. The testing regimen isn't as strict as it is in Major League Baseball. And yeah, I mean that you summarize the story accurately. Essentially, by the time all the dust had settled, Peyton Manning's legal camp was acknowledging that there were HGH shipments sent to the Manning home, but they were for They were for Ashley. And yeah, I mean, that would be if Aaron Judge acknowledged that he'd been getting HGH shipped to his home for his significant other over a period of time. I'd expect that Major League Baseball would handle it differently than the NFL did.
All right. I'm interested in something you said earlier and answered one of my questions, Will, that the NFL is more focused right now on the Brian Flores lawsuit than they are on what's going down with Dan Snyder. What is going on with that lawsuit? Are there negotiations being had about a potential settlement? It always intrigues me when someone's, we're not settling, we're going to court. And then they go ahead and settle like Deshaun Watson. I'm not settling, completely unfounded. And they settled 20 out of the 24 cases. Is the NFL negotiating a settlement? Are there settlement talks going on? Is this going to go to court? I can see the magnitude of the lawsuit if it ever goes that far. Where is that suit sitting as of right now?
I mean, it's still pending. I don't know if there are negotiations. I haven't done any reporting directly on that case. With all of these issues, anytime there's a lawsuit brought against the league or a team, the league does what I think it's trying to do right now, which is it tries to get it back into confidential arbitration. This popped up with the Snyder thing. There were minority team owners that tried to sue Snyder, and that ended up getting steered right back into confidential arbitration, which basically means it goes back before a league arbitrator. We don't know what happens. I think the reason why that's perceived by people we talk to as more of a focus for the league, just because that's a more damaging PR hit for the entire league.
True.
And I think it's inescapable. There just is, whether or not Brian Flores was not hired because of the color of his skin, there are equity issues in coach hiring, front office hiring that the league has just not been able to to remediate. And so yeah, that's what I mean by that. I just think it's more of a focus for that league office than dealing with the latest flare up in Washington.
He is at the Will Hobson, investigative reporter for the Washington Post. We got through the difficult stuff. Will, want to get to the happy stuff with you. For those who don't know, Will is a Philadelphia area native. You were an Eagles fan. Number one, are you still an Eagles fan? Because when you cover sports, you tend to get jaded, especially when you cover some of the issues you've been covering over the years. So are you still an Eagles fan? How much attention do you pay to the Eagles these days? And what do you think of the Eagles offseason?
I still follow the Eagles. If I'm ever accused of bias in how I write about the Commanders, I try to point out that if my journalism ever resulted in Dan Snyder losing ownership of the team, I'd be like enemy number one in Philadelphia. I think that it seems like the local brand for Howie Roseman has seen a significant uptick over the last 2 or 3 off seasons.
Yes.
I'm cautiously optimistic it'll be a better on the field product this year. Just hopefully Jalen Hurts develops a bit as a downfield passer.
All right, then give me your read on the upcoming season for the Commanders. First, you got to tell us, are you giving us Will Hobson journalist, Will Hobson Eagle fan, Will Hobson have to cover the Washington Commanders because it's my beat? First, clarify how you're looking, through what prism you're looking, and then tell us, how do you think all these brush fires that the organization has to deal with will actually affect the product on the field come September?
Yeah, I mean, I don't cover the on-the-field product, so I wouldn't be offering commentary as a journalist there.
Come on. You're a football fan. You said you're an Eagle fan. So
I'm less
a football fan. Read on the Commanders.
I said I follow the team. And also my outlook would be less informed than my colleagues. Look, the off-the-field flare-ups shouldn't affect the on-the-team product. I mean, the big issue for the Commanders has always been quarterback play. So if they get better play from Carson Wentz than they've gotten in years prior, theoretically they should have a very good defense and they have very good outside threats. There's no reason to think they can't be competitive, and that dumpster fire of a division.
It is still a dumpster fire, but not the top two teams. Well, the Eagles are getting better. I think it's clearly an Eagles-Cowboys race. But where were you at the end of Carson Wentz in Philadelphia, Will, as an Eagles fan? No, judgment on the player. The off the field stuff, some of the controversies with potential teammates, and some of the whispers, and sort of an introvert, not an extrovert. Where were you on Carson Wentz as an Eagles quarterback?
I mean, I don't know about the inside the locker room stuff. It looks like 17 was a bit of a flash in the pan, and the team did a great job of just maximizing what was, his best year. I've always wondered to what extent that concussion affected him that he had in the Seahawks game. I had a lawyer who operates in that space say that he thinks it might have affected his processing speed, and that could explain how he played after. But yeah, I mean, I can understand his issues with the front office when he went sour. When you're looking at, Justin Jefferson and DK Metcalf playing elsewhere, and you're throwing to who he's throwing to. So yeah, I think it was tough on both sides. I think that fortunately for that franchise, they may have just happened. I'm certain that's not how Howie Roseman wanted it to play out, but it may have been really the best long-term outcome for the franchise for him to go elsewhere and them to move on.
If Will's bosses at the Washington Post are listening right now, we suggest you send him to the south of France to see if he can get a sit down with Mr. Snyder at some point.
I actually made that suggestion recently. It was swatted aside, unfortunately.
Well, they even made a mistake with the Instagram photos. A couple employees out there. That organization is a mess.
You and I are simpatico there. I'm trying to get you to south of France with a big expense report. Will, great stuff coming on with us today. Thank you very much for sharing your inside information info. Even though you kind of passed on saying the Eagles are going to the Super Bowl this year, we'll forgive you for that. Yeah. Will, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and Will, I'm taking 0.1% credit for your success. So congratulations.
Hey,
good seeing you.
You deserve at least 2 to 3 tenths.
There you go. So, that's Will.
Great seeing you, John. Good talking to you.
Thanks, Will.